We're going to review Unit 3. You guys will have a test tomorrow. Make sure that you do that test tomorrow, otherwise you're going to be counted absent. Other than that, we will not have a Zoom. You'll just do your test, and it'll open probably whenever I get here, so somewhere around 8 o'clock, and I may wait till 8:30 if I forget to do it when I first walk in, okay? So just be ready for that. All right, I think it's all on EDIA too. I don't think there's anything in Canvas this time. It's all on EDIA. All right, so solve each equation by factoring. The first thing that you're going to do, remember your first step to factoring is try GCF. So we're always going to try that GCF first. So in this one, we have a GCF of B. Again, if you break it down, B, B, and 5B, you can see that you have these in common. And that leaves B minus 5. Okay. You set both equal to 0. This one is finished. And then we're going to get B by itself. So on this one, we're going to add 5, and we get that B equals 5. Remember the cheater method I told you, if it's inside of parentheses, you take it out, you just change the sign. Okay. So that one is just a GCF. If we look at number 2, the problem with number 2 is it's not equal to 0. So make sure you get it equal to 0. The way we're going to do that is to add 5. And what happens is both of these cancel out. And now it looks just like number 1. Okay, so 2 terms is either going to be pairs and share, or it's going to be a GCF. So we have M, 6 is 2, 3, and M. So the only thing they have in common is an M, which leaves M minus 6. Anytime you pull out a letter or a variable, it's going to be equal to 0. You're done with that one. M minus 6, this is the last one that I'm going to solve out. We set it equal to 0. We add 6 to both sides. But you don't have to show that work. Okay, you do not have to show that work. You can just change the sign. All right, any questions 1 or 2? And again, those 2 are both going to be GCF, and then set your stuff equal to 0. All right, the next one, get it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 2. I get k squared plus 5k minus 6 equals 0. Since it's 3 terms, I can either use cheater method or I have to do slide and divide. Since there's no number in front, I can do cheater method. So I need factors of the last that add to the middle. Watch your 5s and 6s. They like to trip you up on these. I know it sounds like they're super easy, but a lot of times you miss the signs. And just for reference, remember I told you you can put it in your calculator. I need factors of -6, so I put in -6 divide x, -6 divide x plus x. And then I check my table, and I'm looking for 5 in the red column, and it comes next to 6 and -1. So your 2 factors are a +6 and a -1. And then remember, anytime I pull it outside of parentheses or put it in, I change the sign. So if it's a factor of +6, your answer is going to be -6. Factor of -1, your answer is going to be +1. And again, these first few problems you've been doing since Math 1. Okay, so this is not new to you. Okay, we factored them a couple weeks ago. We solved them last week. We're testing this week. You need to know how to factor, because the next thing that we're going to do is factor even bigger ones. Okay, so it might be multiple factoring. So be ready for that. All right, this next one, we're going to check for a GCF. 5 is 5 and 1. 26 is not divisible by 5, so there's no GCF. So this one's going to be a slide and divide. So I'm going to slide it and multiply it. So x squared minus 26x. And then -24 times 5 is -120. Now we can use cheater method, and I don't know my factors of negative 120, so I'm going to put them in my calculator. I'm looking at my table for negative 26, and it's right there with 4 and negative 30. So a positive 4 and a negative 30, but I need to remember to divide. So I slid the 5. I'm going to divide by 5. If you can reduce it, reduce it. If not, your answer is right there. 4/5 will not reduce. Instead of a positive 4/5, we're going to have negative 4/5. 30 over 5 reduces to 6. Instead of an x minus 6, our answer is going to be positive 6. That's it. Any questions? Everybody okay? All right. The next one is the same exact way. It's already equal to 0. We're going to slide and divide. 18 and 16 are not divisible by 5, so there's no GCF. We get 5k squared. Sorry, not 5k squared, just k squared. Minus 18k plus 80. If you already know the factors, use those factors. If not, just like we did before, we're doing 80 factors of positive 80 that add to negative 18. There's negative 18, so k minus 8 and k minus 10. What do I need to remember? Divide. Don't forget that part, okay? I don't want you to get it wrong. So we're going to divide by 5. If you can reduce it, go ahead and reduce it. If you're not sure if you can, your calculator will do that for you. So if you get some bigger numbers. So I put in 8 divide 5, math, enter, enter, and it still gives me 8 over 5. That means it won't reduce, okay? If you can reduce it, it will. So the first one is going to be positive 8/5. And then 10 over 5 is 2. So k is going to be, sorry, a positive 2. Okay, 10 over 5 reduces to 2. All right. Any questions on number 5? Is everybody okay? All right, number 6 is a little different. It's only 2 terms equal to 0. That means I either have pairs and share or I have GCF, right? All right, so I have 2 n and n. And I'm going to go ahead and put the 1 with it. And there's a reason that I'm doing that. I can factor out an n. That leaves you with 2n plus 1. If you wouldn't put the 1 there, make sure that any time that you circle everything, there's always a factor of 1. Okay? You're going to set your first one equal to 0, which will give you your answer. Your second one equal to 0, the way I solve it is subtract 1 and divide by 2. So n equals negative 1/2. That's it. 7 and 8 just have bigger numbers. It's the same exact thing, just bigger numbers. So I'm going to get rid of the 4 so I can get it equal to 0. Okay. Now, I'm sure that there are some GCFs in here. I'm sure that there are. But when you're solving, you don't have to have them, especially when you have your calculator. Okay. I would try to go ahead and do it. I know that 56 is 7 and 8, and 8 is 3 2s. If you're not sure of factors of 273, you can put them in your calculator like this and see if they give you whole numbers. There's 7 and 39. I'll get down to the positive one if you'd rather see that. So that is 7 and 39 is going to be 3 and 13. These both have a 7, so chances are this one might have a 7. I can check my factors of 196, and I do have a factor of 7. There's 4 and 49. That one's a little bit easier. So I can see that I have a GCF of 7, and all that does is make your numbers smaller. It does not change your answer whatsoever. So then I would have 8x squared, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 times 13 is 39. And 7 times 2 is 14, times 2 is 28. If there is not a letter or a variable with it, then that GCF doesn't matter, because we would just divide it over, and 0 divided by 7 is 0. So it's not going to change anything. Now I can do slide and divide. So I get x squared minus 39x. And I'm going to do 28 times 8, which gives me 224. Then I'm going to find my factors of the last. And again, I don't know my factors of 224, so I suggest that you do use that calculator like as much as you possibly can. And you can on the final, so it's not a big deal. I'm looking for negative 39. It's at negative 7 and negative 32. Don't forget you did slide. So you have to divide. 7 over 8 will not reduce, so your first answer is positive 7/8. 32 divided by 8 is 4. So positive 4 is your second answer. Again, it's the same work, it's just bigger numbers, but use that calculator. Please, please use a calculator. You're not dumb if you have to use it. On the next one, we're going to subtract 7. Which gives us a negative 42. I can see that all of these are divisible by 2, but it could be more than 2. So 12 is 2, 2, and 3. If you're not sure about 78, you can try it in your calculator. I did 78 divided by x, so you guys can see that. I have 3 and 26. So 3, 26 is 2 and 13. 42 is 6 times 7. So if you guys look, there's a 2 and a 3 in common. Again, if you forget the GCF in this and you just do straight slide and divide, it's not going to hurt anything, okay? So if you forget a GCF, it's not going to hurt anything. If it's a variable GCF, it'll hurt something, okay? So everything will be fine. So we take out a 6, that leaves us with 2n squared minus 13n minus 7. And remember, if you take out a number, it doesn't matter, okay? Only if you have to GCF a variable. We're going to do slide and divide. So we get n squared minus 13n minus 14. Factors of negative 14 that add to negative 13 are negative 14 and positive 1. Again, you can find those on your calculator if you need to. Don't forget to divide. 14 over 2 is 7, so instead of a negative 7, your answer is a positive 7. And instead of a positive 1/2, because it doesn't reduce, you just change the sign to negative 1/2. Any questions? I know it's going kind of quick, but I want to make sure I get this done and give you time to upload and do whatever you need to. Okay. Get your next ones. All right, same thing. We're going to get it equal to 0. We get 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. Since we have a number in front, no GCF because 11 is not divisible by anything but 11. We're going to multiply it over. So x squared plus 11x plus 18. Factors of 18 that add to 11 are 9 and 2. Please don't forget to divide. I hate for you to miss it because you forgot that part. Please divide. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So our first answer is, sorry, no parentheses, -3. And then instead of a positive 2/3, my answer is -2/3. So then I have 3 with quadratic formula. Out to the side over here, I'm going to write your quadratic formula. So x equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember, once you get it equal to 0, you can see your a, b, and c. So here's your a, b, and c on number 10. So we're going to do x equals -b just means change the sign. So it's a +4. So I'm going to change it to -4. Plus or minus the big fat square root. 4 squared minus 4 times a is 4. C is -5. All over 2 times a is 4. Also another one where the GCF does not matter. Okay, so if you don't do the GCF before you start, that's fine. It'll just have bigger numbers. That's all. Remember, we only do what's under the radical. Do not put that square root sign in. So we're doing 4 squared minus 4 times -5. And then 2 times 4 is 8 on the bottom. You want to break down 96. Remember, if you don't know your factors, I know them, but if you don't know them, you can use your table and find some that you're better with. So like 4 and 24 are easier to break down. Okay, you can pick anything, it doesn't matter. 6 and 16 is easy to break down. So 6 is 2 and 3. 16 is 4 and 4, and the reason I picked that one is because it's already got pairs. Okay, so if you already have pairs, use them. You're going to circle your pairs, and they're going to come to the outside. So -4 plus or minus. I had a pair of 4s. I left 2 times 3 or 6. And again, that's over 8. The last thing you're going to do is check your triangle of numbers. Okay. They're all divisible by 4. So you're going to have -1. That 1 has to be there. Plus or minus, this 1 does not. Leave the square root alone. 8 divided by 4 is 2. This would be your final answer. Okay. And I think all but 2 of you did your homework on Friday, so you were okay with the way it went into EDIA, right? Everybody was okay. All right, it'll be the same way. All right, the next one. What's weird is that it's missing a term. So this is the same thing as 10k squared plus no k term plus 9. So 0 is going to be your b. There is a better way to solve this. We're just not there yet. Okay, we will get there. X equals -b. It doesn't matter because 0 is neither positive or negative. Plus or minus big fat square root. B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Do what's under the radical first. 0 squared minus 4 times 10 times 9. We get -360 over 20. 360 is 36 and 10. 36 is 6 and 6. 10 is 2 and 5. The reason I use 6 and 6 is because it's already a pair. What else do we have underneath here? a negative, so we got to pull out I. This 0 doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything. So our final answer, well, maybe not our final, so we have to reduce, is 6I. So 6 from the circle, I because it's a negative. Under the square root, I left 2 times 5, which is 10 over 20. Now, this one doesn't have a triangle of numbers. It just has these two. So if these will reduce, you want to reduce them. They are reducible by 2. So 3I, do not touch the square root. 20 divided by 2 is 10. This would be your final answer. I don't know if Edia would like the 0 on the top or not. I don't know. I don't know if y'all did any like that or whatever. If anybody knows, yell at me and let me know. But typically it will not have it on there. Okay. And then number 12 just has 2 numbers or 2 terms on this side. We need to move it over. So we're going to add 7x, and remember it's going to go to the middle, and we're going to subtract 9 from 16. So we'll get 7x squared plus 7x plus 7. Clearly there's a GCF, right? Did everybody see it? If there's a GCF, go ahead and get rid of it. Do you have to? Absolutely not, but you'll reduce it out in the end, okay? So I would go ahead and reduce it, x squared plus x plus 1. And then you don't have to work with that 7, just like if you were solving normal. All of your numbers, a, b, and c, are all 1. 1x squared, 1x, and 1. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. Everything is 1 all over 2 times a. Do what's under the radical. We get the square root of negative 3 over 2. 3 will not break down, but we need to take care of that negative. So we would have negative 1 plus or minus, take care of the negative with an I. The 3 will not break down over 2. There's no triangle of numbers to break down. So that one's pretty quick and easy. You have to know quadratic formula because you're about to get into that cube stuff that you did. Okay. One thing that I think was not in your notes was factoring negatives, but you guys figured it out after doing a couple problems on EDIA. So most of you did really well with this, okay? So on this, because it's negative for both of them, I would go ahead and pull it out. I would try to see if 192 is divisible by 3 as well, and it is. So I'm going to pull out a negative 3, which gives me a positive 64 plus x cubed. All right. We're just going to keep bringing that negative 3 down. And we're just factoring this. We're just factoring. So remember, we take the cube root. The cube root of 64 is 4. The cube root of x cubed is x. So our formula says just write what you see. X plus 4. In the next factoring, square the first. Sorry, that can be 4 plus x. It doesn't matter. If you do it 4 plus x, that's fine as well. Square the first. Change the sign. Multiply them together. Square the last. That's it. So again, if you have a cubed plus b cubed, it's going to be the same as the problem. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. If it's the opposite way or it's a minus, it's going to be a minus b to start with, a squared plus ab plus b squared. So there's your two formulas for those. Again, if you can take out a GCF, please take out a GCF. How do you know if you need to take out a GCF? If we look, remember our cube root is under math 4, and I have 375 and it comes out to be a decimal. Do I see that? There's a GCF somewhere, so I got to figure that out. So the way I figure it out is because I don't know my factors. I'm going to put it in my calculator like this. Check out my table. Right there's a good one, 3 and 125. 5 and 75 is a good one. I know 3 and 125. 125 is 3 fives, okay? All right, 648. Is 3 and 216. If you don't know what that is, you can keep going down there. Is 8 and 81. That's a good factor. 8 is 3 2s, and 81 is 9 times 9, or 3, 3, 3, and 3. So they have in common just a 3. So you have a GCF of 3. And then you guys see how you have sets of 3. That's how you know they're perfect cubes. So my first cube root is going to be 5. So like I did this one over here, I did 4 and x. This one is going to be 5. This one is 2 times 3 times your variable, which is 6a. Okay, so 5 and 6a. So start with the way the problem works. 5 minus 6a. Those cannot be switched around unless you make it negative 6a plus 5. Square the first. 5 times 5 is 25. Change the sign. Multiply them together. 5 times 6a is 30a. Square the last. 6a squared is 36a squared. Don't forget to put your GCF on the front. Okay. And again, we're just factoring, not solving. It's a good thing because that last one would be huge numbers. Is everybody good? All right, flip it over. Still factoring. To know if I need to do a GCF, I'm going to do math 4 and try 192, and I see that it is a decimal, so it's got to be something. I look at my table. I have 3 and 64. That one's kind of easy. 3. 64 is 8 and 8. I'm going to leave it like this for a minute, but remember 8 is 3 2s. Okay, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, whatever. 81 is 4 3s. So we do have a 3 in common. So we're going to take that out. That leaves me with 64u cubed plus 27. Just to show you again, if it's perfect cube, it's going to come out perfectly in your math cube root. So this one is 4u, and the 27 you saw up there was 3. Okay. Bring down that GCF. It says write it just like you see it, so 4u plus 3. Square the first. 4 squared is 16, and then u squared. Multiply them together. 4 times 3 is 12u, but make sure you change the sign. And then square the last. 3 times 3 is 9. Any questions? All right. So the next one is exactly the same thing. We're just finding the roots. That means solve it. Make sure you solve it. Sorry, so you guys can see that. So we're going to take the cube root of each, and I showed you a little cheater method, so like 18 and 19 that are pretty much the same, just opposite signs, so you can work without having to do the same problem over and over again. So if you can remember that, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm about to show you. So on this one, take the cube roots, x and 1. Write what you see, x minus 1. Square the first. Multiply them together, but change the sign. If you want to do 1x, that's fine. And then square the last. The first one is easy because all you do is change the sign. So your first answer is a positive 1. You should give me 3 answers on this. And again, all of you did your homework on Friday and got 100, the ones that did it. So if you have questions on this, especially tomorrow, let me know. If you have questions today, let me know. But it looks like you did really well on it. X equals, we're going to do quadratic formula. Negative b would be negative 1, plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c. Everything is 1s all over 2a. And we've already done this one time on the other side. So what I would suggest that you do is make sure that you're using some scrap paper, and then that way if you get one on the solve that's the same, you have it, okay? You already have it done. So x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus. This will give us the square root of negative 3 over 2. And the way I fix it is I pull out the negative 1. With an I. Nothing else will reduce. That is your other 2 answers, negative 1 plus I square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1 minus I square root of 3 over 2. Any questions? So these are pretty easy because you don't have to do any hard work, okay? If you pull out a GCF like we did up here, remember the GCF doesn't matter, you'll just solve these 2, okay? Only if you pull out a GCF of a variable. Same thing on this one. Take the cube root, you have x and 2. So write what you see, x plus 2. Square the first. Change the sign and multiply them together, so minus 2x. Square the last. Instead of plus 2, our answer is going to be a negative 2. So there's your first answer. And then the rest goes in quadratic formula. X equals, your A is 1, your B is negative 2, your C is 4. So change the sign of B, it's going to be a positive 2 plus or minus big fat square root. Remember that I always use the positive. You can use a negative, just make sure you put it in parentheses, put it in your calculator right. So 2 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Just put in your square root part. 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 gives me negative 12 over 2. 12 is 4 and 3, or 2, 2, and 3, which means I have a pair of 2's. Don't forget it's a negative, so I'm pulling out the 2 as well as the I, leaving the 3 divided by 2. Last step is your triangle of numbers. All divisible by 2, so 1 plus or minus 1i square root of 3 over 1. But realize that this one and this one do not matter. The front one does. 1 plus or minus I square root of 3 is your final answer. The biggest thing I have is everybody does this part right, and then when they go to write this, they leave this one off. Make sure that front one is there. The rest of them don't matter. Okay? Front one has to be done. All right, 3 more, guys. 3 more. We have x and 5 as our cube roots. Again, if you need to, math 4. One more time, math. And then cube root 125 is 5. Write what you see, x minus 5. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last, always positive. Our first answer is a positive 5. We just changed the sign. Our next two answers take the quadratic formula. Always. Don't try to like make crazy numbers. You have to use quadratic formula. Okay. X equals negative b would be negative 5 plus or minus big fat square root b squared minus 4 times a is 1, c is 25, all over 2 times a is 1. Underneath the square root or the radical, we're going to get negative 75 over 2. Your factors of 75 are 3 and 25, which is 5 and 5. So there's your pair, and don't forget it's a negative, so we got to pull out an I as well. If you need to write that down, do that. So we get negative 5 plus or minus. I took out a 5 and an I, left a 3 over 2. Check your triangle of numbers. 5 and 2 are not divisible by anything. So that's as good as it gets. We are going to do the other one full through, but remember on your test, you're just typing it in. So if you can remember that it's opposite, that's fine as well. So we have x and 5 again, except for this time we're going to start with x plus 5. And then x squared, change the sign, multiply them together. Oh, square the last. Your first answer, again, is going to be opposite signs. So negative 5. When we plug this into quadratic formula, opposite signs again, plus or minus big fat square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c. If you guys look, that's the same exact thing. So nothing there is going to change. All over 2 times a, also the same, nothing's going to change. So the only thing that's going to change is going to be a positive 5 plus or minus 5i square root of 3 over 2. So again, the only thing that changes is this front number sign. Okay, so opposite signs, that's it. Last one, we have x and 4. So our first factor is x minus 4. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. To solve the first one, just change the sign, so that one's easy. On the next one, use quadratic formula. X equals negative b, so a is 1, b is 4, c is 16. Plus or minus big fat square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Do what's underneath the radical, and you get negative 48. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 48 over 2. Negative 48 is 6 times 8. So 2 and 3 and 8 is 2, 2, and 2. On this one, I have 2 pairs of 2, which makes 4. I have a negative, and I'll leave a 3. So it equals negative 4 plus or minus. I had 4, a negative, so I'll pull out an I. I did not circle the 3 over 2. I do have a triangle of numbers on this. Make sure that you do have that that's a negative 4. They're all divisible by 2, so negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Plus or minus 2i square root 3 over 1, but remember the 1 on the bottom doesn't matter. So we can mark it out. And our final answer is -2 plus or minus 2i square root of 3. Everybody good? Feel okay? Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. We will not Zoom tomorrow, so the only way that you can get attendance for tomorrow is to do your test. If you don't do your test, it will be an absence and a 0. So please don't do that. Make sure you do test. I do not care, honestly, what time you do it tomorrow, as long as you get it done before midnight, okay? You guys sitting in class. I'm going to stop sharing, stop recording. Hold on.